Hello, everyone who are joining us, whether you're joining us through Zoom or through Facebook Live, a big Founders Week welcome. We are at day 4 of day 6. So we're coming closely to the end of Founders Week, but as you've heard all week long, this week is all about celebrating, connecting, engaging, and building momentum and opportunity around the WindsorEssex startup community. I do want to acknowledge that although this is a virtual event, we would like to respectfully acknowledge that the land on which we gather today is a traditional territory of the Three Fires Confederacy of First Nations, comprised of the Ojibwe, the Adawa, and the Potawatomi peoples. We are grateful to work and live and learn in this wonderful area. Weeks like this, again, we couldn't do it without our amazing partners and sponsors, and you've heard their names all week long, but they include the Government of Ontario, St. Clair College Alumni Association, Libro Credit Union, The Job Shop, Workforce WindsorEssex, Baker Tilly LLP, Alpha Core Group, VentureIt, and our 3 founding partners, EPICentre, Genesis Entrepreneurship and Innovation Center, and the WindsorEssex Business Entrepreneurship Center and WEtech Alliance. That is a mouthful, but again, if anyone has done any type of event planning, you know just how important those sponsors and partners are. Today's session is brought to you by WEtech Alliance. As you know, we're kind of the tech organization in the WindsorEssex community. And today we're bringing you a bit of tech talk, but again, to reflect on the day of Remembrance Day today, we thought we'd bring a really interesting guest to us who has Windsor roots, which we'll get to, who's joining us live from Toronto. And we'll hear about what brought him to Toronto today and what big thing he got to be a part of. But just some housekeeping items. We are leveraging Zoom webinar. So if you have a question for our guest today, feel free to include it in the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen, and feel free to chat with other attendees if you'd like. And on Facebook, we'll be trying to monitor questions coming in from there. But all these sessions will be recorded. So what's awesome is if you missed any sessions for Founders Week, we're recording all the videos, and we're also putting together a toolkit, which will have links, resources, and tangible takeaways. So Jeff, if you mention anything today, we'll make sure to include that in our toolkit. And we know we want the whole world to know what's going on here for Global Entrepreneurship Week and Founders Week. So please feel free to share your experience, your takeaways on social media using the hashtag Founders Week YQG hashtag. Okay. So today is Remembrance Day, and this is a day where Canadians pause in a silent moment of remembrance for the men and women who have served and continue to serve our country during times of war, conflict, and peace. I do want to push out a good resource if you're looking to learn more about the Day of Remembrance to fully understand what this day means. Please go to veteran.gc.ca, and I'm sure someone could put that into the chat. Again, a great resource is available for you. But today I am joined by a friend, a colleague in the tech sector, but someone who's representing an organization called Coding for Veterans today. And we're going to sit down and learn about what is Coding for Veterans. And obviously, Jeff is also an entrepreneur, so he'll talk a little bit of weaving all that in together. But briefly, before we begin, Jeff's bio: he is the founder of the tech organization northof42.org, which connects tech entrepreneurs across North America, serving over 12,000 members, and his Coding for Veterans program that helps military veterans transition into tech sector jobs. Musson is a serial entrepreneur and CEO of dynamicnetwork.com, a leading software development company specializing in the area of connected car technologies and artificial intelligence. Steph, I think that means you need to get more involved in Windsor because, as you know, we are on our way to becoming the automobility capital of Canada. So Jeff, how are you doing this morning, or this afternoon, I guess it's 2.
Yeah, exactly. The day flies by. Awesome, Yvonne, and I'm really happy to be here, and I'm glad you invited me to speak today.
It's not at the patio at Walkerville Brewery, but this still works, right, Jeff?
Oh, this works, exactly. The virtual kind of thing, right?
So why don't you share? You had an exciting opportunity today. In fact, I think you were supposed to be in Ottawa, but you're in Toronto. So what did you get up to this morning?
Yeah, so the Coding for Veterans program, which, just for your audience members, I'll just give a little background on it. We help Canadian military veterans retrain for jobs in Canada's tech sector. And as I'm sure a lot of your viewers are acutely aware, talent is the big issue in finding that talent in Canada. And so what this program does is it identifies those men and women that are releasing from Canada's military, finds those that have an aptitude for a career in tech, and then we partnered in with the University of Ottawa in which to deliver the curriculum to retrain them either as software development people or cybersecurity. And what's interesting is pre-COVID, we would go to various military bases and go to their job fairs and what have you. And obviously those got shut down. So in the true entrepreneurial fashion, we really started thinking out of the box. How do we get our messaging out to, the troops and the veterans in a socially distant kind of physical distant manner? So we created the Coding for Veterans Career Caravan, and we had some customized outdoor tents built. And then we actually partnered in with legions across Canada, because what is one thing that I've learned what every municipality has? They have a post office, a liquor store, and a legion, right? And so those legions have asphalt. So we were able to set up in 25 plus communities across Canada. We kicked it off September 10th in Ottawa. And then what's interesting was we got invited to ring the bell with the Toronto Stock Exchange this morning as the last stop on our Coding for Veterans tour. And that was very exciting because Canadian businesses don't put the same value of military service that American, especially down in the Windsor, Detroit area. You see businesses over in Detroit and in Michigan, and they really put an emphasis on hiring veterans. For whatever reason, Canadian companies don't do that. We're trying to change that narrative. And what better place in which to have that discussion and promote the opportunities than at the center of business at the TSX? And we rang the bell, and I'm happy to say the markets went up. They didn't tank. So hopefully it maintains that the rest of today.
Well, what a wonderful experience that may be. So I'm going to skip our rapid fire questions and save those to the end.
Yeah.
But again, Jeff, maybe I know we read your bio, but perhaps you can just give some context to, a little bit about your entrepreneurial journey, and then what really drove the creation of Coding with Veterans. Because I do know you just alluded to kind of the tech talent need, but I believe there was actually like industry, just like everyone's crying for talent right now. It's one of the biggest things we hear from our companies, and whether it's WindsorEssex or across Canada. So I'll give you back the stage to share a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah, for sure. So proud, grew up in Windsor, still, maintain a residence down there, and graduate of the University of Windsor. I'm actually an odd individual. I've never worked for anybody. And that includes even in university. I mean, I've been starting businesses from lawn sprinklers to cable installation to getting into software. And what's interesting is that as my software business continued to expand, and this was before the days with remote working, that really kind of, a lot of our customers were really Toronto based, which really forced me, unfortunately, to come out. However, we're making an effort to, really engage now in the Windsor area. And so what's interesting is I own a software company, Dynamite Network, and we're really a for-hire shop. Come to us, we'll build software for companies. And it was really about 2.5 years ago, we landed a contract with an insurance company to use machine learning and AI to do risk analysis on auto accident files. Which files should their legal departments pursue and which ones should they settle? And obviously there was a need to expand, our business. So I put out an ad on Indeed and ZipRecruiter, just as a lot of your audience members do. And to say I was underwhelmed at the lack of talent is an understatement. And sometimes necessity is the mother of all invention, right? And so I remember going into my boardroom, pulling out the whiteboard, and I said, if I were to create my ideal software developer, what skills do I want? Well, you want attention to detail. You want leadership. You want teamwork, can-do attitude. And I took a step back and I'm like, holy cow, these people are in the military. And what's interesting is I'm fortunate because every year up until the pandemic, I actually chaired Tech Day on Parliament Hill. So I brought us geeks together with the political establishment to talk policy and really engage. So I knew a lot of the chiefs of staff from the ministers. And so I put together a one-page synopsis. And really the theory behind it is, can we identify out of the 7,000 to 10,000 men and women that leave the military every year, those that have an aptitude for IT, partner in with an academic institution, and really also highlight the latest in curriculum, but also in learning. Like everyone's hearing about micro-credentialing, right? And so that's really what, putting this little one-page synopsis, and, as I say, I flew it up the flagpole, and next thing you know, I get a phone call from the minister's office in Ottawa and said, when can you come here and explain this? And really that was the roots of it. And so I didn't know how successful this would be. I didn't know what would happen, but let's give it a try in the true entrepreneur beta kind of test.
I was just going to say, we're called Founders Week Beta. So we're doing the same thing. We're kind of learning as we're going.
Yeah.
So Jeff, yeah, we've got a comment here from Sue just saying, not only love the idea, but the social impact. As you said, there are 7,000 to 10,000 women and men who are exiting the Canadian military every year. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe give a quick rundown of the program. How long is it? Who is it for? You talked about women and men, but I believe you extended that as well to other different verticals and family members.
Absolutely. And so what's interesting was the first thing, and I would give this advice to any entrepreneur out there, listen to the marketplace. You don't have to have all the answers, but engage in discussion. Yeah, absolutely. They know what they want, right? So what do? The first thing is we assembled a focus group of military veterans, and we said, tell us what the good, the bad, the ugly of releasing from the military. First thing they said to us, we're done uprooting our family. So whatever program gets put together has to be delivered online, and it has to come to us, right? And the second thing is they don't want to spend time getting a 3 and 4 year degree. They want the life skills that they have brought together with some technical skills, and quite frankly, get out there into the job market. And then the other thing that was interesting, what really started off as just software development, we, through this listening tour, we'll say, realized that there's like 35 to 40 occupations inside the military, which are heavily into IT. So that really forced us to expand the program to focus also on cybersecurity. And then when we figured that out, what's the one thing that people from our military have that civilians don't? Security clearances. So now they can hit the ground, right? Yeah, sometimes you just stumble on dumb luck when you listen, right? And then on the flip side, we went and we talked with HR people from Canada's big banks, IBM, Amazon, as well as smaller entrepreneurs. And we said, what are the software courses in demand today, but 5 years into the future? And they listed them out. And then when it comes to cybersecurity, because there's just a tremendous amount of accreditations and certifications, what do the hiring managers have when they see it on a resume that just pole vaults someone to the interview phase? And really that's the CCNA certification, the CISSP. So what do you think we did? Before anyone graduates from our program, they write those 2 certs. And if someone were to take our software development program, it's 650 hours and it takes about 6 to 8 months, right? If they do the cybersecurity full-time, it's 8 to 10 months, and people can do it part-time. So what was interesting was we actually, as this program continued to evolve, we learned it went from a retraining, reskilling program to a community building exercise. And we actually had a number of spouses and family members that applied to the program. And where Veterans Affairs pays the tuition for the veteran, they don't pay it for the spouse or the family members. So we went back to our connections, AKA through the Toronto Stock Exchange and others, and we raised scholarship money. So now we have spouses and family members that are able to partake. And it was a great way to, number one, increase gender diversity, because the military for most part is male dominated. But now we've given an opportunity for spouses who have, for the most part, again, I'm talking generalities, they put their career on hold so their spouse could serve. Well, now we're bringing the learning to them. And what was interesting was this program continued to evolve. And one of the cool things that we actually did this past summer was, I'm sure a lot of your listeners were watching the situation unfold over in Afghanistan. And what happened was, we have a lot of Afghan vets in our program, and we really don't have a Hercules airplane to go over and help these Afghan vets, Afghan interpreters who really, I didn't realize it at the time, were instrumental to Canada's mission over there, because they were the communication link between villages and things like that. We said, we can't help get them out of the country, but we sure as hell can help them establish themselves when they come to Canada. So we've now expanded our program, and we'll pay the scholarship funding for interpreters to come into our program. So now all of a sudden this has started to grow. Well, we, pardon the pun, we got on the radar screen of the provincial government, and they said, hey, can you create a quote unquote civilianized version of this? And I said, yeah, why not? Right? I mean, sure, there'll be some nuances, but the whole structure, because the other thing, Yvonne, I failed to mention, before anyone comes in the program, we actually do a pretty significant assessment of them prior for enrollment. So they write an online assessment. There's an interview. We want to make sure the right people are in the program so they get to the finish line. And that's allowed us to maintain a 95% placement rate of grads coming out of the program. And quite frankly, the other 5% already have jobs, right? So take this model, let's do it with the civilians. So we created a pilot project called Cyber Skills for Canadians. And then what I said was, let's look at a couple of industry verticals that have been severely impacted because of COVID. And the one being the automotive industry.
We know that very well, Jeff.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely, right? And so I reached out to Dave Cassidy and the team at Unifor, and I said, I realized the third shift was cut. Are there, and now the second one, unfortunately, are there individuals that would like to retrain for careers in tech? And really the premise behind it is that with, electric vehicles coming down, and that Windsor Assembly is going to be shifting to an E platform, you no longer need individuals installing engines and transmissions. They need to calibrate batteries, sensors, cyber, all this stuff. And I'm happy to say that we have something like 14 people that are in our pilot group as part of this from the Windsor area.
That's amazing. And I know, Jeff, you had shared a little bit about that in our last visit, but for all of us Canadians, what you're doing is so impactful, and the fact that you've transitioned to so many different new demographics and communities. And we know very well the importance of upskilling here, as we are very dominant in terms of the auto industry. And I'd love to I know the stat because I've read the press release for the stock exchange today, but how many tech jobs are there expected to be open in the next few years? And where are you seeing people and, the graduates of your programs going into?
Yeah, so this is a mind-blowing stat, right? For those that don't know it, in the next 12 to 18 months, it's projected 147,000 IT jobs are going to go unfilled. So, take what's that, about half the population of Windsor, right? Could be the unfilled jobs. And so what's interesting is that there's opportunities in multiple sectors. Like, it's no longer a tech, department within a company. Tech weaves its way through everything. And so what's interesting is graduates from our program, they get hired. And look, there's been a lot of bad things that happen because of COVID. One good thing I tell people is it's brought the workforce 15 years into the future. Before, you used to, have to move to Kitchener-Waterloo, Toronto, wherever. Now you can actually live in Windsor, which is an amazing place. You can get the jobs, and people out of our program get hired by Toronto Dominion Bank, CIB. So the big banks, they get hired by defense contractors. They get hired by, small to medium businesses. I mean, it's incredible to see. We've also had police officers that served in the military who then, within their police service, went from being a beat cop to now working in the cyber operations. So, it's a whole iteration of how things kind of evolve. And as you know, I mean, I've never met anyone more passionate about the tech sector than yourself, right? it's the future and it's here to stay. So let's figure out how to leverage this.
Yeah, it's so true. I think there's still this misconception when you think of the word tech, we automatically go to like the Googles and Amazon and Facebooks, and we don't really go into like, even, tech is associated with the word coding, right? And the amount of levels of jobs within the tech sector, from sales to cybersecurity, they're not all technical.
Yeah.
Jeff, how many people have graduated to date from the Coding for Veterans program?
Yeah, so are you ready for this? So what's interesting was,
I want to ring a bell.
yeah. Talk about beta. So this thing launched September 2019. So just right before the pandemic hit in March, right? We started with 5 people because we weren't even sure that this would work. How no one had ever done this. In fact, it blew me away that the codingforveterans.com URL was still available, right? So that we're treading through new territory. Since that time, we have now just under 200 people in the program, and it is scaling out. It's doubling every cohort. And there's January, May, September. And out of that, we've so far placed 25 people, but now they're all coming out on a monthly basis to start filling the funnel. And now, as you talk about tech, we're in the scale up phase. And so now like it's limitless, right?
That's amazing. So 5 to 200. So yeah. I got to imagine throughout the, since 2019, there's been so many, I'll call them warm, fuzzy moments, right? Those moments where it's just like, wow, what's been your best moment so far throughout developing and scaling this program?
Yeah, so what was funny was sometimes in life, it's better to be lucky than good, right? And we were lucky, right? Because all of a sudden this program's growing, and there were so many people that said, oh, it has to be face-to-face and, what have you. And remember, it's pre-pandemic days. And we said, no, go back to what our core group of people told. Listen to your customer. It has to be online. And then all of a sudden, March happened and the world fell off the cliff, except for us, because we were already 100% online. Now, between you, me, and the fence post, I jokingly tell people the reason was done online is I anticipated the pandemic, which no one believes me on that, right?
Oh, boy.
But, yeah, I wonder why, right? And so it was an ability where, if you remember those first few days when we were into lockdown, it's like, oh my God, what are we going to do? And then you just sort of take a deep breath and you said, okay, let's figure out how to iterate. Let's figure out how to do this. And, doing reach out, leveraging social media, taking a lot of these tools that are used in industry and putting them into the program. And then we said, what if we sort of went back to an old idea and created a road show, like old school, right?
And I love that. In a caravan, as you know, very well linked to Windsor.
Absolutely, right? And so what happened was, you didn't know how successful. Well, let's throw it out there and iterate as things sort of evolve. And I can tell you, in a typical week, we will have 3 to 4 people apply to the program, which is pretty good, right? Since September 10th, so we're talking 8 weeks ago, we've had over just under 300 people apply to the program, which is absolutely mind-blowing. And it blew me away that, it just shows that there was a need out there and, traction and everything else. And I can't emphasize enough the team that was built, that I put together behind this. It's not me. I come up with these crazy ideas, and it astounds me sometimes that my team just believes in it and we execute. And that's the other key thing that I've learned. Execution matters, right? Everyone can talk it, but at the end of the day, you have to be able to execute.
100%. I feel the same way about my team, Jeff. They just continue to amaze me.
Yeah, no, for sure, right? And fortunate, right, that we have people that, with you guys at WEtech and, in our organizations, it's not a me, it's a we kind of thing, right? Where you pull it together. And here's the other thing that I'm sure you've created at WEtech is you built a good culture, like that, with people want to be part of it. And we've done that too with the Coding for Veterans. People just naturally want to be part of this.
Yeah, no, I my staff are probably watching right now. So I do believe we've got a wonderful culture here, and just very passionate people. And I think, Jeff, you're probably in the same boat where people just want to make impact. So they go above and beyond. Jeff, a couple more questions on Coding for Veterans, and then I want to kind of shift gears and go into a bit of, your other side, your other many hats that you wear. So what's next for Coding with Veterans? You've talked about we're in scale up mode. Is it just going to, continue to scale? You've obviously got the now Coding for Civilians. Is there anything you can share with us that for our audience today?
Yeah, so what's interesting is that the program is going to continue to scale, and what's interesting is we actually thought that a lot of people from Veterans Affairs to the counselors that work with veterans, for sure they may have heard about us, right? And maybe it's egotistical thinking, but I mean we've gotten tremendous, like I can tell you the media coverage that we've gotten. My family is sick of seeing me on TV. Like we've been interviewed something like 17, 18 times, and that's on TV. It doesn't even count newspaper or radio, but there's still people of getting that message out, right? So we're going to continue to scale that. But what's interesting is we've had a lot of American veterans reach out to us.
Interesting.
And so we're going to start taking a holistic view of this and look at it from a North American perspective. And in the US, so in Canada, Veterans Affairs pays the tuition for veterans in the program. In the US, it's a GI Bill. So for us moving forward, it's kind of looking at it through a North American kind of lens versus just Canadian, but still centered in Canada, because Canada's reputation as being a solid tech ecosystem, quite frankly, is a great marketing tool, right? So we've got that. The second thing that we're doing is on the civilian side, we want to be able to expand that and look for different verticals. So I mentioned about the automotive area, right? Another area that we actually targeted was the airline industry, because they were severely affected by COVID. And so what's interesting is you may have been a ramp worker or a frontline worker or even pilots, which again, we have them in our program, but what better combination than going back and actually working in the IT departments of these airlines. And what's kind of cool is that they understand the nomenclature, the culture of the airline industry, plus now they have the technical skills. It didn't sort of hit me how powerful that was till someone in our Coding for Veterans program actually was a paramedic in the military, had our skills, and then they got hired by a med tech company. And I said, how is this possible? And the whole idea is they didn't have to teach that individual about the terminology when it came to medical devices. They already knew that. And so what a powerful combination.
That's amazing. Jeff, for those who want to amplify your message, or to learn more or to register, where do they go?
So if you know people in the military, family members and what have you, it's codingforveterans.com. If you want to, and because our program has been so successful on the civilian side, cyberskillsforcanadians.com is really the spot if you want to look to retrain and reskill. And I know with the provincial government, they actually gave us up until March funding. We've actually used it all up. So we're in a position to go back for more because, again, you've had that high placement rate. And quite frankly, if there's companies out there that are looking to get involved with, either sort of group, things that we look for, we're looking for mentors. So if you have subject matter experts as it relates to Python, Linux, any kind of coding or cybersecurity, we would love to have them part of this ecosystem as well.
That's awesome. And I can attest just about the question about you being on the media. So when we originally planned this, I Googled you to get a headshot, and let me tell you, there was probably what felt like 1 million pages of Jeff Musson. So I can attest.
It gets sickening after a while.
Okay, we had lots of photos to choose from. So no, congratulations. And I believe you'll be on CTV Windsor tonight talking about again what you're doing. We've got an interesting question. I love this question. In fact, I was going to ask it anyways. So Jeff, you're awesome, and Coding for Veterans is amazing. I'm selfish. What is it going to take to for you to bring your HQ and yourself back to wonderful Windsor full time? Well, it's a big question, Jeff.
I know this is making sweat. I got to tell you, I love the Windsor area, right? I mean, it's the best kept secret out there, and so I end up spending a fair amount of time. And in fact, another good thing with the pandemic, I ended up spending a lot of time down there, right? and you start reestablishing. And then you have to remember, Yvonne, the work that you guys at WEtech Alliance wasn't there when I, sort of went up the 401. Now that have expanded and your team has done a tremendous job in terms of bringing awareness and bringing people together. Now that's what the secret sauce is, to get individuals like ourselves to now be, spending more time in reestablishing those roots, right?
And we are going to continue to do that. Jeff, I do want to talk a little bit about your tech side, but, being away, and yes, I do know that you were here over the summer a lot more than maybe past summers.
Yeah.
You've seen the bigger tech ecosystems, right? You spent time in the Valley, you spent time in Ottawa, in Waterloo, the KW Toronto corridor. How can Windsor continue to build? And we're here today talking about, startup community, so sector agnostic, but what can we do? What is your advice to leaders here and companies to do to kind of, push us towards that vision of becoming, putting ourselves on the tech startup map?
Yeah, so a couple of things. It's funny, Windsor has a tie on the heartstrings to a lot of Windsorite. So you have a natural, quote unquote, sales force out there, being individuals like myself and others. So empower us with what's kind of going on down there. And we can, look, everyone in Windsor knows it's great. We need to get the word out to others, right? And the beauty with social media is we can do that. But the best advice I would give, kind of for the leadership and for the area down there, you cannot be an expert in everything. So there has to be one or two areas that you focus on and leverage the assets that you have down there. So, go back to the retraining of manufacturing jobs for electric vehicles, right? There's going to be a huge need for that. And right now it's the Wild West, to be honest with you. There isn't a formula in terms of that. But what I told people is, because they're like, well, we got to do studies this and study. I'm like, BS. Here's what you got to do to figure out the skills. Look to see what Elon Musk is hiring at his plant out in Fremont, California, and make sure that the workforce that you have in Windsor is able to mirror what would be hiring out there, because that's coming, right? The second thing I would do is, what's very natural in the Windsor area? Border security, right? No one has ever set up a center of border security excellence with that kind of tech accelerator focus. And so that you have that natural area. The other thing is agri-tech, right? And you look at those vineyards out in Essex County and in the farmland. And so don't try and be everything to everybody. Pick one or two lanes and do a deep dive on it.
No, that's great advice. And I think, we've obviously planted our flag in the, next iteration of the automotive sector. On the agri-tech sector, that is the sector I see, again, huge opportunity. And many people don't even realize just the amount of under glass acreage we have in Essex County. And even in the medical sector, right? We've got a pretty strong pharmaceutical industry, and obviously WEtech's part of a cross-border cluster. So I guess that I concur with your comment, Jeff, about, you can't be everything to everyone, and looking at those advantages. So yes, that border is so unique, and we're seeing that already, with our virtual reality cave for autonomous and connected vehicles, and the ability to use that to test things like, think about a truck going through, whether it's a tunnel and bridge, signals are going to change, right? And I know that because I cross the border and I get a roaming charge immediately after, right? Yeah. So there's a lot of really cool things that we can do that are unique to other regions. So I definitely agree with you on that. So I want to shift gears. You've been an entrepreneur. You've talked about from sprinklers to the IT company to now coding for veterans. What advice do you have for founders? If you take kind of your whole experience, are there things that come to mind as like, and this week we're kind of talking a lot about failures too, right? About learning and what we can learn from kind of those moments of mistakes.
For sure. So number one, build out your network. I didn't realize how powerful having a network is, but one of my mentors told me, your network is your currency, right? And it's not even so much about networking, in amongst your industry. Like, just hang around smart individuals. I always have joking with people. I want to be the dumbest person in the room,
Yes.
right?
I always said, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room, right? Fill yourself, surround yourself with smarter and more, like, I wouldn't say better, smarter people than you.
Yeah, no, absolutely, right? But build out your network, because in down times, your network is what's going to continue and carry you through. I mean, I went through the 08, 09 recession, and it was rough, right? Got out of it. My network did that. How was I able to launch Coding for Veterans? The network. How did I get invited to the TSX, our group? Again, your network. So that was something that you can't teach in business school, or I didn't learn or didn't appreciate till that, right? The second thing is, don't be afraid of failure. I mean, look, no one wants to fail and what have you. So get out there and just try it. See what works. And then the other thing is, be humble. Don't, there's a reason why we've been given 2 ears and 1 mouth, right? So listen twice as long as you speak, and listen to, what your customers say, where things are going. And then really, one thing that I feel is sort of propelled me through in this last piece is being able to connect the dots quicker than someone else, right? See where trends are going, and then figure out how to, internalize that and really kind of augment and have your business sort of reflect those trends.
Jeff, I feel like we're reading from the same book, because every time I speak to students and young professionals, it's like, what is the key to success? And, what was the learnings? And it was always about relationships.
Yeah.
Relationships matter. And Jeff, I'd love to get your input on one of the things that I found difficult. And I've met a lot of new people over the pandemic, but people like us, and I think anyone who's kind of a social butterfly, we're not meeting people anymore, right? We're not going to conferences. We're not going to, networking events. Over the pandemic, and obviously until the indefinite future, until we know what the future looks like, how have you built new relationships in this virtual world?
Yeah, so what's interesting is there were a lot of unique groups that sort of held online formats. And to be quite frank, I used to fly a lot out, and this, out to Silicon Valley and the West Coast. I mean, 60,000 miles a year, right? And I would never really stay in your hotel room. I mean, yeah, you checked in, but at night I would go on Eventbrite, and what cool events are there? And there's no better way to meet people than not knowing anyone and, kind of do that. So some of that actually got translated now online, but I'll be honest with you, it still isn't the same degree. So what I did was, and it's funny that you bring this up, because I was talking with the TSX guys this morning, in fact, their business development team. So this past weekend, I was actually in Montreal, and I was asked to speak at it's called a campus party. And prior to the pandemic, it was a tech conference. They would have 10,000 people attend.
I know the conference you're speaking of, because there's a Detroit's hosting it, and it's been virtual, but I saw that they brought the Campus Tech Fest to Montreal. So familiar with it. And for perhaps anyone listening from my team can put it into the chat, because it is a really cool event. So sorry to cut you off, Jeff.
Yeah, no, for sure. So this was at the Montreal Convention Center, and I was actually speaking on cybersecurity. And what's interesting is you have, obviously you had all the safety protocols, making sure you're double vaxxed and things like that. But here's this conference, and I felt bad for the organizers. They had really 10,000 people pre-pandemic. They only had 500 people register post, right? And of that, only about 175 showed up, right? And I said to the organizer, look, I mean, you guys are one of the first ones out of the gate, right? Someone had to be the first in the pool to see what happened. And what's interesting is I think when it comes to events, they're going to be shifting for the next little while from just generalized kind of event. And again, take it for what my opinion's worth, right? That and 50, 250.
I'm sure our event planner, her ears are perked right now.
Yeah. It's about focusing on smaller niche kind of events. So this morning I'm with the TSX, and what was interesting was in Toronto, we had the Collision Conference, that kind of rolled out. And I'm a big fan of added on events on top of that. And what I meant by that is what really started off my networking and what really kind of got me to the next level was I went from attending events to hosting them, right? And for selfish reasons, I kind of, if you go to a networking event, you meet maybe 12, 15 people. If you host a thing, I get to meet everybody and I don't have to go out as much, right? And that was the original premise, for it. But what was interesting was we always hosted dinners as part of events. And so in the case with Collision, a couple of years ago, we actually partnered in with the TSX and we hosted a dinner.
Why was I not invited to that? I remember being there.
I don't know. I thought, I think you're busy that day. But the next one. So what was interesting was we did not, I knew some people going to Collision, but what I went through was a speaker list. And I knew to put that dinner on that first night, because when they come into town, they're still trying to figure it out. You would be amazed at how many people wanted, sort of a free dinner. And we ended up having, and we did it at a local brewery in Toronto, and it was wildly successful, right? The guys this morning at the TSX said, hey, Jeff, what if we kind of start doing some of those dinners? We'll find a key speaker and I'll make sure you're on the list, Yvonne, right? And focus. And I think what's going to end up happening with events in the future, at least until people are used to kind of integrate, getting out there, is it's going to be more focused. It's going to be dinners. It's going to be sort of panel discussions. It's going to, things, but not so much quote unquote large things.
Yeah, it's interesting. A number of us are going to be heading to the Consumer Electronics Show, which is coming back in person in January. So
are you going? Because I was looking at going.
Yes,
and in fact, one of my friends from Silicon Valley wanted to do a dinner. Now, what's interesting is I don't know if what I just told you applies to the US, because unfortunately, as you know, I mean, being that border's kind of been closed, it's only starting to open up. So I'm really curious to see what's going on in the US.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. And like I said, I think as any leader right now is you can't plan for things. You don't know all the answers, and you just got to go forward, just, doing your best and being okay with that. So, Jeff, thank you so much. This was so helpful and so timely today as we look to remember the lives lost and those who continue to fight for our freedom. Again, we've shared some links there, and we're getting rave reviews, Jeff, in the chat if you're seeing that. So again, thank you for what you do for veterans and for civilians and for a number of other populations. Thank you for bringing the WindsorEssex praise to all parts of the world as you start to go back traveling. I couldn't agree with you more about the importance of staying connected to people and alumni like yourselves. In fact, an idea that we keep talking about is a big homecoming event where we bring back alumni. Detroit's done this for a number of years, and it's such a great way to reconnect. We may never get these people to move back, but their networks are so powerful. They've got a great insight to share. So maybe
sign me up and let me know when we can do this.
All right. You heard it. You heard it here, folks. We've got our first confirmed guest. So you'll be on the invitation list, Jeff. Don't worry, no problem.
Awesome.
Now we're just going to. Your feedback is so important to those listening, or if you're going to be re-listening to this once we share the toolkit. So please fill out the survey. We'll put a link in the chat now. And it takes a few seconds, and anyone who enters, whether you enter one time for one event or 30 times for all events, you'll be entered into a draw to win a $50 Welcome to Windsor Visa gift card. So that is really exciting. So, and other than that, what's coming up next? So we've got 2 more days of Founders Week after today, but coming up today, we have a fireside chat with Pinas Toli from Windsor Eats. If you know them, Windsor Eats was on the cover of Entrepreneur magazine over the last year, doing some really cool, innovative stuff and putting Windsor on the map for so many things, including whiskey, craft beer, food. So please tune in. I know Pina well, and she's just an amazing speaker. So Jeff, again, thank you so much for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you back in Windsor real soon.
Sounds good, Yvonne. I appreciate the opportunity.
All right, take care. Thanks everyone for watching.